Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would talk about this little conversation that I found particularly interesting. And I'm not going to be reviewing a video in this video. I'm overall just going to give my own little breakdown of this because I just thought that that would be the best way to do it, at least for this video. There was a couple of videos that particularly I could review, but I just did not really find them overly interesting enough to really review, and I just didn't think that they really had an over amount of information to really share. But apparently, in recent news, of course, and for those of us that know about this big super fight that happened in the year 2021, of course, which of course I believe it is one day away from being a new year, the year 2022. We all know, of course, that Mr. Oleksandr Usyk, who was the former completely unified cruiserweight champion, and of course Mr. Anthony Joshua, the former somewhat unified heavyweight champion of the world. Of course, Anthony Joshua lost his titles to Oleksandr Usyk because Oleksandr Usyk not only was able to beat Anthony Joshua, but in my opinion, he pretty much was able to completely dominate him. I did think that there was some competitive moments in the fight. I did think that Anthony Joshua, that maybe you can argue that he did at most pull out a good solid 4 rounds, but I'm not sure if I would argue any more rounds than that. It was about a 9 rounds to 3, 8 rounds to 4 fight in favor of Oleksandr Usyk. Now, personally, I actually favored Anthony Joshua going into that fight because I just thought that Anthony Joshua, I thought that he would be a little bit too big and a little bit too skilled for Oleksandr Usyk. Now, all in all, I do think that Oleksandr Usyk, even before the fight prediction, I thought that Usyk was all around more talented and skilled than that of an Anthony Joshua. But I thought that the weight and I thought that the height and I thought that the power was going to be a little bit too much. But I think personally that the game plan of Anthony Joshua and his skills, I just think all in all that it really was not the right game plan, in my opinion, to really beat an Oleksandr Usyk. But in my opinion, if you were going to ask me this question, do I think that Anthony Joshua, do I think that he has a great chance? Do I think he has a 50-50 chance? Do I think that he has a 90% chance? Do I think that he has a 10% chance, a 15% chance? What percentage of a chance or what, chance do I think that Anthony Joshua has to defeat Oleksandr Usyk, the person that just dominated him and pretty much thoroughly outboxed him in his last fight? Well, I believe that Anthony Joshua, what I'll say is this. I believe personally that he has more of a chance to beat Oleksandr Usyk than what I would have gave Deontay Wilder to beat that of a Tyson Fury in the trilogy. Now, whether that means a whole lot to a certain amount of people, it may not. But at the end of the day, what I'll say is this. Anthony Joshua, I do think that he is a decently skilled boxer. I don't think that he's someone that, has the skill set of an Oleksandr Usyk or Saul Canelo Alvarez or, a Floyd Mayweather Jr. or whoever the hell else you want to compare him to. I don't think I'll know that he even has the skill set of a Tyson Fury. But Anthony Joshua is not a gold medalist for no reason. Now, of course, a certain amount of people, of course, will review the history and they'll say, well, Joshua really didn't deserve a gold medal. Whatever your opinion is about Mr. Anthony Joshua, he did decently well in the Olympics from what I'm sure. And overall, for the short amount of time I believe that he was in the amateurs, the thing is about Anthony Joshua is that I believe he's actually somewhat similar to that of a Deontay Wilder. And Deontay Wilder has never really been known for his boxing prowess, but he was known overall for at least being decent. And of course, he was an excellent athlete. It's somewhat similar with that of Anthony Joshua. Now, of course, I would say all in all that Anthony Joshua is a decent amount more skilled than that of a Deontay Wilder. But when you do take a look at some of Anthony Joshua's flaws, there is a multitude of holes in his game. I don't think necessarily that he has a great head movement, and that has been a complaint for many people for Mr. Anthony Joshua for a very, very long time. There's a lot of people that will tell you that he is robotic in style. I'm not necessarily going to go as far to call him completely robotic, but I do understand what people mean because he does tend to sometimes not have great head movement. Another big problem with Anthony Joshua, in my opinion, is that he really needs to use his jab and his feet a hell of a lot more. And I always say this in terms of boxing. And, if you've sparred, if you've trained in boxing, or even if you just watch it, if you just have high intelligence for boxing when it comes down to it, I believe personally that feet are the most important thing in boxing, not just footwork, but having quick and fast feet, being able to get in and outside of the range. Because that can be the difference between getting knocked out, not getting knocked out, getting hit, not getting hit, get your punches off, not getting your punches off. So when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, foot speed and footwork at the end of the day, in my opinion, is very important. The problem with Anthony Joshua is that sometimes he tends to be a little bit flat-footed, and he's not the person with the quickest feet in the world. And of course, you somewhat expect that out of Anthony Joshua, someone who's about 240 pounds, 6'6", with an 82-inch reach. You somewhat expect that. The problem is in this next fight is that he's facing someone who is a natural cruiserweight who's probably going to rehydrate maybe at about 225 pounds of max from what I've seen. He is decently quick when it comes down to it. That's why I believe his nickname is the Cat when it comes down to Mr. Oleksandr Usyk's nickname. Oleksandr Usyk has way better feet than Anthony Joshua. He has usual way better head movement. He has better defensive responsibility. When we just talk about in terms of the all-around skills, just I don't think that there's one boxing skill, in my opinion, that Mr. Anthony Joshua actually beats Mr. Oleksandr Usyk in. I don't think that there's really one thing. I don't think that he has better defensive responsibility. I don't think, all in all, that he has better head movement. And I certainly don't think that he has better feet or better footwork or better foot speed. I don't think that he has better hand speed. The only thing that I would say Anthony Joshua really has the advantage in over Oleksandr Usyk would be height, reach, and power. That would really be about it. And I don't know if that's really enough to beat Oleksandr Usyk in a rematch. Now, certain people may say, well, what adjustments do you think Anthony Joshua can make in the rematch in order to beat that of an Oleksandr Usyk? And there has been recent rumors that that Anthony Joshua has gone to the U.S., the United States, to train with that of a Floyd Mayweather Jr., a Derek James, or Ronnie Shields, all-time great, some great fighters, some great trainers. I think that Anthony Joshua can potentially learn from every single one of them. Ronnie Shields, I think, is one of the all-time great coaches. Derek James, of course, is one of the better coaches in the game right now. Floyd Mayweather Jr., great mentor, at least as of yet. When it comes down to it, he may be able to teach him a few things. He has a very, very high boxing IQ. But, just heading into this rematch, what this fight actually reminds me of, and a certain amount of people may disagree with me, this fight actually reminds me of Saul Canelo Alvarez versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. when that fight happened many, many years ago. Now, don't get me wrong. I think even at that point in his career, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez was decently more skilled than probably an Anthony Joshua ever will be. But when it comes down to it, the reason why it reminded me of it is because I think Saul Canelo Alvarez, when he was boxing Floyd Mayweather Jr., when he was in that fight, I think that Saul Canelo Alvarez, even though he tried to fight in a multitude of ways, it seemed like Saul Canelo Alvarez thought that he was going to try and outbox a Floyd Mayweather Jr. And even back then, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. knew it as well because, he said that Canelo actually has a decent amount of slickness to him. He can be decently slick. He was talking about that when it was the Miguel Cotto versus Saul Canelo Alvarez fight. The problem is that there's going to be some boxers out there that you just can't out-slick. There's going to be certain fighters that you're going to need to get on the inside with them, or you're going to have to make them uncomfortable, or sometimes you are going to have to be slick with them. When Saul Canelo Alvarez fought Gennady Golovkin, Saul Canelo Alvarez, a big part of the reason why he was able to beat Gennady Golovkin is because he knew his limitations. He could go on the inside with Gennady Golovkin here and there. That was a part of the game plan to beat Gennady Golovkin, but he was not going to go blow for blow in the middle of the ring with Gennady Golovkin in any of those fights because even his trainer, Eddie Reynoso, said, don't get hit by this guy. Don't overall exchange with this guy. This dude, all in all, is more powerful than you. Or maybe he didn't say don't exchange with this guy, but basically he said, don't go blow for blow. Hit and not get hit. And that's basically the objective of boxing. But the reason why I compare this fight to that of a Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus that of a Saul Canelo Alvarez, am I comparing these two fighters on that level? No, I'm not. But what I am saying is this. I think that Oleksandr Usyk was the smaller, the faster fighter with the quicker feet and the better angles when it came down to it. And all in all, just the faster hands. And Anthony Joshua, even for the short amount of time that he trained in boxing, I believe, he still is very talented. He's an excellent athlete, and he does have a decent amount of skills, even for the heavyweight division. But I think that it's going to be very, very hard for Anthony Joshua, even if he does get some mentors like a Floyd Mayweather Jr., like a Ronnie Shields, like overall a Derek James. This is going to be a very difficult task. And this is not an Andrew Ruiz Jr. situation. Oleksandr Usyk is a bigger threat to Anthony Joshua than what Andrew Ruiz Jr. ever was. And a certain amount of people may disagree. I think Andrew Ruiz Jr., I think that he's a decently talented fighter. And I remember when Andrew Ruiz, when he actually defeated Anthony Joshua, and there was many people saying, well, even though Anthony Joshua won the rematch, I still think that Andrew Ruiz Jr. is more skilled than Anthony Joshua. What Andrew Ruiz Jr. is, and I like Andy is a decently talented fighter. It was very impressive that he was able to beat Anthony Joshua and become, I believe, the first Mexican or Mexican-American heavyweight champion, of all time, I believe, at least from what I know of. But when it comes down to it, what Andrew Ruiz Jr. really is, he's like a crocodile or an alligator that you see, but, it's still dangerous, but this alligator or crocodile is out of the water. Basically, what am I trying to say? Andrew Ruiz, if you get on the inside with him, if you get overall within his comfort zone, if you get in the water with him, just like if you get in the water with a crocodile or an alligator, you're in deep shit. But if you stay your distance and overall, if you peck the jab out there, if you use your reach, if you use your feet, you can get over Andrew Ruiz Jr. because Andrew Ruiz Jr. has such slow ass feet when it comes down to it, and he has feet literally planted into the concrete that he's not going to be able to catch you. And that was a big part of the reason why he ended up losing that slight decision over Joseph Parker, because Joseph Parker, usually, especially in those bigger fights, tends to like to fight on the back foot. And when it comes down to it, it was the same with Anthony Joshua in that rematch. Andrew Ruiz, even on land, like I said, a crocodile and alligator, it's still very dangerous, but the chances of it grabbing onto you with its jaws when a human is on land, it is exponentially lower than what it would be overall in the danger zone in the water. It's the same thing with Andrew Ruiz Jr. Oleksandr Usyk is a completely different monster. He is not an alligator. He is not a crocodile overall on land. He's a tiger. That's what he is. And I'm sorry for, the animal comparisons. But he's fast. He has very quick reflexes. He has excellent feet. He can outspeed you. He can out-angle you. He can out-counter you. And on top of that, Anthony Joshua is not known for his A-grade resilience. And I'm not talking about overall his heart. I'm not talking about, his mental toughness, because it's easy for me to say, oh, well, Anthony Joshua, he's a quitter and all that sort of stuff. I could say this, basically all I want to. I think that that's easy for a lot of people to basically say, even though I think sometimes that can tend to be a little bit disrespectful and go too far sometimes. But I get it. There are certain boxers that maybe don't have the greatest of mental toughness. I think for Anthony Joshua to come back in the way that he did, you have to have great mental toughness. And to take the rematch with Oleksandr Usyk, I think you have to have a great amount of heart and great mental toughness. The problem is that I don't know if Anthony Joshua has the boxing IQ, and I don't know if he has, like I said, skill for skill to beat Oleksandr Usyk. So in my opinion, and I'm not a professional boxing coach. I'm not a Derek James. I'm not a Ronnie Shields. I'm not a Floyd Mayweather Jr. So of course, whatever I say is not going to have as much weight. But this is just my personal opinion. What is Anthony Joshua more than likely going to have to do over Oleksandr Usyk? In my opinion, I don't know if it would be a good idea to try and outskill this guy. Because if you try to outskill a guy that has way faster feet than you, better head movement than you, can work better angles than you, and all around is probably at least the slightly more talented fighter than you, if you try to outbox him in the middle of the ring like you did in the first fight, once again, you're going to get embarrassed. So what do you have to do? Now, a certain amount of people say, well, he has to fight like a heavyweight. He has to come in larger. He has to go and try to crush, Oleksandr Usyk. He has to basically go in there and try to knock him out. And although that looks great on the surface, Oleksandr Usyk is a person with a very extensive and expansive amateur background. He can fight in a multitude of ways. He was able to completely unify the cruiserweight division by fighting in a multitude of ways. He has beaten every opponent that he has faced. He has beaten a certain amount of styles. I do agree that Anthony Joshua in this fight is going to have to come forward at least a little bit. But the problem is that you can't just go balls to the wall. You're going to have to be defensively responsible. You're going to have to use your jab. You at least have that 4-inch arm reach. That's not the greatest reach advantage that I've seen a fighter have, but it's at least something. The problem is that Anthony Joshua, sometimes when you have a bigger fighter up against a smaller fighter, the smaller fighter actually at times can have, the advantage. It's basically like a fighter jet if they were going up against, one of those big planes, one of those big aircraft. Sure, if that big plane were to hit the small aircraft when it comes down to it, it would kill it in one shot if we're able to get a hold of it. But the fighter jets overall are way faster when it comes down to it. So, it's pretty much like a tiger versus, like, let's say, I'm trying to think overall like a good comparison, maybe like a bigger herbivore when it comes down to like a giant, wildebeest. Sure, the wildebeest is bigger. It might be able to gore the tiger if it hits it with its horns. But the tiger, all in all, just has more weapons at its disposal. And on top of that, it's harder to hit. So, like I said, Oleksandr Usyk, when it comes down to it, it is going to be a very, very difficult task for Anthony Joshua to beat Oleksandr Usyk in this rematch. I think that he does at times have to go on the inside. I see certain combinations that he's already working on. I think an uppercut to the body and a hook to the body repeatedly, that would be the way to go, especially if you get in close quarters. Because if you try to outpeck this guy, if you try to out-jab this dude or try to outbox this guy by just going to the head, that's not going to work. You're not going to outbox this guy by trying to hit that target, because especially when you have a very defensively responsible, fighter who has very, very good feet and very good head movement, hitting them to the head, each and every single time, that's not going to happen. It's like people all know that when they try to outbox Floyd Mayweather Jr., they may try to go to his face repeatedly. Like I've seen Saul Canelo Alvarez try to do that. You're not going to hit Floyd in his face repeatedly because he's so damn quick. He has great defense, and all in all, he has excellent reflexes. It's the same thing with Oleksandr Usyk. So what do? All in all, if you can't hit the head, you have to go to the body. And what do I think this starts with? Anthony Joshua has to use his feet in this fight. He has to be very quick with his feet. And on top of that, when it comes down to it, I think Anthony Joshua has to start off with his jab and not to the head. He has to start it off to the body. Now, you can start it off to the head overall or to the body against someone like Andrew Ruiz Jr. because Andrew Ruiz, once again, very, very slow feet. And usually I would advise even a certain amount of fighters overall to start out the jab because a jab is key to setting up other combinations and other punches. But at the end of the day, Anthony Joshua, I do not believe, should start jabbing Oleksandr Usyk repeatedly to the head, maybe a little bit later on to set up other punches. You're going to have to mix it up. Jab to the body here and there. Come upstairs with another jab. Double jab, triple jab, maybe even possibly. Jab to the body, come upstairs with the right hand. Maybe throw a right hand to the body. You're going to have to mix it up. You can't be too repetitive. You're going to have to mix it up. But all in all, you're going to have to go to the body a lot in this fight. I don't think that he did enough of that in the first fight. And on top of that, when it comes down to it, you have to use your feet. So at times, you're going to have to pressure Oleksandr Usyk and make him uncomfortable on the inside when it comes down to it. And on top of that, when Oleksandr Usyk, if he's able to hit you with a good shot, or if you're overall, away from the inside and Oleksandr Usyk tries to create space, back up, use your feet all in all, try to tap him behind the jab, whether it be to the body or whether it be to the head if he's coming in. And I think that is the way that you have to beat Oleksandr Usyk. But the question is Anthony Joshua overall going to be able to use his feet? Is he going to be able to use his jab overall to beat Oleksandr Usyk? And is Anthony Joshua overall, is he going to revert back to his old ways or panic if Oleksandr Usyk is able to touch his chin and hurt him once again, which is possibly likely. So we'll have to see what happens. But anyways, that is my little breakdown overall of this possible fight. And overall, I just thought that it would be interesting because, of course, Anthony Joshua, I do think, is making the right move to go to Floyd Mayweather Jr. and a couple of other these U.S. and United States coaches. The question is, will it be enough? And it'll be very, very interesting to see. Now, also talking about another aspect of this fight, Anthony Joshua overall gaining weight. Do I actually think that it is a good idea to gain weight? I don't think so. And a certain amount of people may disagree. Some people may say, well, get back up to 240, get back up to that. I don't think that that's going to be a good idea. Because if he does that, Anthony Joshua is not going to have the stamina. Anthony Joshua has always had a little bit of stamina problems. It's never been horrible. Like, it's never been like Conor McGregor bad, like in MMA or something. But, and Conor, he has somewhat of a gas tank, but it only goes for about 3 rounds out of a 5-round fight. But when it comes down to it, bottom line is this. Anthony, when he was at that 245 state, almost around 250, Anthony Joshua, he could fight for a solid 8 rounds out of 12. But when you're in a fight like this, you have to fight 12 out of 12 rounds. There's not a round overall that you can let go of because this is going to be potentially a very, very competitive fight. So in my opinion, actually, I think that Anthony Joshua should be around the weight that he was at last time, which I believe was around 235, 230. I actually think that is the greatest weight. That's where he has the best stamina when it comes down to it. And on top of that, you're going to be a little bit speedier and you're going to need it. Once again, I don't think that overall you should try to outbox this guy in terms of boxing him in the middle of the ring. That's not going to work. It's not going to happen. This dude, all in all, in terms of skills and in terms of overall head movement, footwork, foot speed, he's better than you, at least in those terms. So Anthony Joshua, my advice to him would be this. I don't think all in all that you should try to 100% prove that you're the more skilled fighter against Usyk. You should try to out-strategize him. That's what you should do. Sometimes people have to know their limitations. And sometimes, we can try to, if you're in boxing, you can try to, let your ego get the best of you and say, wow, this person is really getting the better of me. Let me step up my game and try to outbox him. But sometimes you have to make people a little bit uncomfortable. It was the same thing, with Saul Canelo Alvarez and Oleksandr Lara. Oleksandr Lara, in the beginning of that fight against Saul Canelo Alvarez, I thought that Oleksandr Lara was getting the better of Saul Canelo Alvarez. And a lot of people would debate that Oleksandr Lara won that fight. But at the end, what I'll at least say is this. Saul Canelo Alvarez was at least starting to pull out more rounds because he realized, you know what? This isn't going to work if I just keep following him overall and I try to go counter for counter. I'm going to have to pressure this guy. I'm overall have to at least make it look good on the scorecards. Overall, at least go to his body, trap him in a corner, trap him up against the ropes, try to hit him, land overall as flush as I can. As they say sometimes, you have to box the fighter and fight the boxer. So we'll see what happens in this fight. But anyways, that's pretty much my breakdown, at least as for right now. I just thought that I would talk about that. And that's pretty much about it for today on that. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.